You know, usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of like clinical precision.
Right, yeah. Like it's black and white.
Exactly. You break your arm, the x-ray shows a jagged white line, and the doctor just points at it and says, there's the problem. It's binary. It's either broken or it's not.
Yeah, you can see it, you categorize it, and you fix it. We really crave that kind of definitive proof.
We do. But step into the world of forensic investigation, and sometimes that x-ray machine is just feeding you static.
Oh, absolutely. The landscape gets profoundly murky.
It really does. And I want to welcome you to today's deep dive, where we are looking at a diagnostic landscape that is just, well, it's basically all static.
Yeah.
Usually we try to solve a mystery by finding that one missing piece of evidence. But the mission today is different. We are tackling a case where the problem isn't a lack of evidence. It's that the evidence contradicts itself at like almost every single turn.
It really does.
We are respectfully and calmly examining the tragic 1996 death of 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey.
And before we go any further, I think we really need to establish a very clear framework for this.
Yeah, please do.
Because of the family's wealth and, JonBenet's participation in child beauty pageants, the media apparatus at the time they turned this immense tragedy into a sensationalized spectacle.
Right. It was everywhere.
It was. So our objective today is to strip away all of that noise. We are actively avoiding speculative conclusions.
Because there's already been enough of that, frankly.
Exactly. We're relying strictly on the sources we have for this deep dive. That includes the historical investigative dossier, extensive academic overviews from EBSCO regarding the forensics, and the official 2024 to 2025 update from the Boulder Police Department.
Right. The goal here is just to examine the facts and the sources, to look at the profound investigative contradictions that make this one of the most, frankly, perplexing unsolved cases in American history.
It's deeply unsettling. And to understand how the physical evidence became such a battleground, we have to start at the very beginning of the timeline.
Yeah, specifically how the scene was handled in those critical first few hours.
Right.
So the timeline kicks off early on the morning of December 26, 1996. At 5:52 a.m., Patsy Ramsey calls 911. She reports finding a ransom note.
And the police arrive at the Boulder, Colorado home within 3 minutes.
Which is incredibly fast.
The speed of that response is commendable, definitely. But the immediate decisions made by those first officers, they basically set off a catastrophic chain reaction for the forensics team later on.
How so? Like, what did they do wrong right out of the gate?
Well, the initial responding officers conduct a cursory sweep of the house, right?
Okay.
And they don't spot any obvious signs of forced entry.
Okay.
But because they are operating under the assumption that this is a strict kidnapping scenario, based on the ransom note, they make a fateful call. They only cordon off JonBenet's bedroom.
Wait, just the bedroom?
Just the bedroom.
Meaning the rest of this massive multi-level house is just left completely unsecured?
Completely unsecured. And the implications of that are staggering when you consider who is coming through the front door next.
Right, because the family is understandably terrified, so they start calling people.
Exactly. They invite friends, victim advocates, their minister, all come over for emotional support.
Wow.
So you suddenly have multiple people moving freely around a potential crime scene. They're picking things up. They're moving items. People are even wiping down surfaces in the kitchen, just trying to be helpful.
Oh my gosh. I mean, if the absolute golden rule of crime scene preservation is isolation, how does a house full of supportive friends deliver it on?
They're essentially dismantling the scientific integrity of this space. Really.
Totally. They really are. You're dealing with low cards exchange principle here.
Which is what exactly?
It's a foundational concept in forensics. It basically states that every contact leaves a trace.
Okay.
So when someone walks across a floor, they bring in fibers and dirt, and they take away microscopic evidence on their shoes.
Right, of course. When someone wipes a counter, they aren't just cleaning. They are actively destroying latent fingerprints. They're smearing biological material, altering the chemical environment.
So every single footstep and moved object is just introducing reasonable doubt into any eventual court record.
Exactly. It washes away the foundation of the evidence.
It's like a sandcastle at high tide. The more people walk through and clean, the more everything just washes away.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Which I think casts a shadow over one of the most haunting details from that initial search.
Yeah, basement door.
Right. Officer Rick French goes into the basement early that morning. He comes to a specific door that's secured by a simple wooden latch at the top of the frame.
Right.
He pauses, looks at it, and walks away without opening it.
And his logic in that moment is purely mechanical.
Mhm.
He's looking for an exit route or a hiding spot a kidnapper might have used.
Right, he's looking for an active threat.
Exactly. And if a wooden block is swung over the door on the outside of the room, securing it from the hallway, a kidnapper couldn't possibly have hidden inside that room, locked the latch from the inside, and then vanished.
Because it defies the laws of physics.
Right.
But JonBenet's body was behind that very door.
She was. And she remained in that room until about 1 p.m.
That is just so tragic to think about.
It is. So at 1 p.m., Boulder detective Linda Arndt, who was managing the scene upstairs, she asks John Ramsey and his friend Fleet White to search the house to see if anything seems out of place.
Okay.
They go down to the basement. John opens that latched door that Officer French bypassed earlier. He finds his daughter, and his immediate reaction is to pick her up, rush upstairs with her, and he actually removes a piece of duct tape from her mouth.
I mean, from a parent's perspective, that is the most natural human instinct imaginable. You see your child, you try to help.
Absolutely. Anyone would do the same.
But forensically speaking, what does moving the body do to the investigation at that point?
It devastates the context, utterly devastates it.
Really? Just from moving her?
Yeah, because by moving the body, investigators immediately lose the ability to analyze the exact positioning, which can tell you a lot about how a crime occurred.
Oh.
You lose precise temperature readings needed to establish a time of death. Picking her up compresses clothing, which can, transfer trace fibers from JonBenet or vice versa.
Muddying the waters of who was in contact with her when?
Exactly. And pulling off that duct tape compromises the adhesive and potentially destroys any microscopic evidence trapped underneath it.
Wow. So the contamination of the scene really ripples out and touches everything, especially the physical artifacts.
Yes.
Okay, let's unpack this next piece. Let's look at the document that set this entire morning into motion. The ransom note.
The ransom note is, it's perhaps the most heavily scrutinized piece of paper in modern criminal history, purely because of how wildly it deviates from typical criminal behavior.
It's so bizarre. First of all, it's 2.5 pages long.
Right.
The exact demand is for $118,000. And John Ramsey quickly pointed out to police that $118,000 is nearly identical to his Christmas bonus from the prior year.
Which is a highly specific, very personal number.
Extremely. The note was signed SBTC, claiming to be from a, quote, small foreign faction. And it actually contained dialogue lifted from popular movies of the era.
Yeah, that's one of the strangest parts.
You have phrases that echo lines from Speed, Ransom, and Dirty Harry.
And when you look at FBI behavioral profiling regarding ransom notes, the contradictions are glaring.
Like what?
Well, it is incredibly rare for a kidnapper to author a lengthy demand note at the scene of the crime.
Right, because they want to get in and get out.
Exactly. Writing over 1,000 words takes significant time. It indicates an author who feels comfortable enough to sit in the house, write at length, and just not worry about being discovered by a waking family member.
And we know definitively it was written there, in the house.
We do.
They used a pad of paper and a pen belonging to the Ramsey home. They even found a practice draft left behind.
Yeah, a practice draft.
I mean, it's like a bank robber walking into a lobby, realizing they forgot their demand note, and deciding to write a new one on the back of the teller's deposit slip while everyone is watching.
That's a great analogy.
If we are to believe a meticulously organized small foreign faction planned this, why show up without a note already prepared? Without the most important tool for the extortion?
It makes no sense. The behavioral profile just doesn't align with the physical reality of the note.
Not at all.
Plus, the text threatens the immediate execution of JonBenet if the family contacts the police or speaks to friends.
But Patsy Ramsey called 911 immediately.
Right, and then called several friends to come over.
Oh.
Furthermore, when forensics processed the note, it yielded no foreign fingerprints.
None.
None. The only prints found belonged to Patsy and the various authorities who handled the paper after the fact.
So investigators naturally turn to handwriting analysis, right, to cut through the confusion. But this is where the science itself seems to break down.
It really does.
How does forensic document examination actually work? And why couldn't experts agree on who wrote this?
So forensic handwriting analysis involves comparing a questioned document, in this case, the ransom note, against known writing samples or exemplars from a suspect.
Okay, like old letters or something.
Yeah. And examiners don't just look at how a letter looks. They measure pen pressure, the spacing between words, the baseline alignment, and how, loops in letters like Y or G are formed.
That sounds pretty scientific.
It does. But the problem is, Handwriting is dynamic. It changes based on the writer's stress level, the writing surface, or a deliberate attempt to disguise one's natural style.
Oh, I see.
So it relies heavily on the subjective interpretation of the examiner.
Which explains the massive fracture in expert opinion that happened.
Exactly.
Because the Colorado Bureau of Investigation analyzed the note and concluded there were indications that Patsy Ramsey wrote it, though they couldn't make a definitive match.
Right, they were leaning that way.
But then a federal court later cited 6 certified experts who concluded it was highly unlikely she was the author.
Yeah, complete split.
You even have Dr. Michael Baden, a deeply respected board-certified forensic pathologist, stating that in 60 years of practice, he had never seen a note like it. He fundamentally rejected the idea that an outside stranger came in and wrote it.
The complete lack of consensus on the ransom note is really a microcosm of the entire investigation.
It is.
Almost immediately, the case split into 2 worrying theories: a family member versus an outside intruder. And depending on which piece of physical evidence you isolate, you can build a really compelling case for either side.
So, what does this all mean? Let's dig into the autopsy findings and see how that physical evidence points in different directions.
Okay.
The official cause of death was asphyxia by strangulation, associated with craniocerebral trauma, meaning a severe skull fracture.
Yeah, it's horrific.
And the garrote used for the strangulation is another deeply troubling artifact. It was fashioned from a length of nylon cord and the broken handle of Patsy's own paintbrush.
Right. And they found part of the bristle end of that brush in Patsy's art supplies, but the bottom third was never located.
And in addition to that, there's the pineapple.
Right. The pineapple is key. In addition to the trauma, the autopsy revealed undigested fruit material, consistent with pineapple, in JonBenet's stomach.
Okay.
Digestion rates suggest it was eaten just hours before her death. And crime scene photographs taken that morning show a bowl of pineapple with a spoon in it sitting on the kitchen table.
And police reported finding Patsy Ramsey's fingerprints on that specific bowl.
They did. Yet both John and Patsy told investigators they did not remember putting that bowl on the table, nor did they recall feeding JonBenet pineapple before bed.
So if we look at the Boulder police's approach, they heavily leaned into the family theory because of things like this.
They did. They
Yeah.
pointed out that statistically, child homicides involve a family member or caregiver at a ratio of 12 to 1.
Wow, 12 to 1.
Yeah. And they believe the crime scene and the ransom note were staged to look like a kidnapping gone wrong.
And the Boulder police were so steadfast in this interpretation that they actually brought the case before a grand jury in 1999.
They did. And the grand jury voted to indict the parents for placing their child in a threatening situation, resulting in death.
But the parents never went to trial.
No, they didn't.
Explain how the legal machinery works here for us. If a grand jury looks at the evidence and votes to indict, how does the district attorney just walk away from that?
Well, it comes down to the different standards of proof required at different stages of the legal system.
Okay.
A grand jury operates behind closed doors, and they only hear the prosecutor's side. Their job is simply to determine if there is probable cause to believe a crime occurred and the accused committed it.
So it's a lower bar.
It's a relatively low bar, yeah. A trial, however, requires a prosecutor to convince a jury of guilt beyond a reasonable doubt.
Right.
And District Attorney Alex Hunter refused to sign the indictment. He stated publicly that he did not believe the evidence his office had gathered was strong enough to meet that high burden of proof in a courtroom.
And a major reason for the DA's hesitation was likely the intense internal pushback from investigators within his own office who championed the intruder theory.
Yes, absolutely.
Like Detective Lou Smith. He was a legendary homicide investigator brought in to assist, and he looked at the exact same crime scene and saw a completely different story.
Smith focused on physical anomalies that just didn't fit the staging narrative.
What kind of anomalies?
Well, he pointed to an unidentified boot mark found in the basement room. He highlighted a broken basement window with a suitcase positioned directly underneath it, suggesting, an intruder used the suitcase as a step to climb out.
Okay.
Smith also theorized that specific paired abrasions on JonBenet's body were consistent with a drive stun from a stun gun.
Wait, how does a stun gun leave a specific mark?
So a drive stun doesn't shoot darks like a taser. You press the device directly against the skin.
Ah, got it.
The electrical current passes between 2 metal prongs. If pressed firmly, it can leave paired, rectangular, or circular burn marks of very specific distance apart.
Oh, wow.
Smith argued an intruder used this to silently subdue JonBenet.
But critics of the intruder theory point to the physical environment surrounding that broken basement window And this is where the contradictions get maddening.
They really do.
Because police noted that there was an intact spider web stretched across that broken window pane.
Right.
The steel grate covering the window well outside also had undisturbed cobwebs, and the foliage around it was completely untouched.
Yeah.
I mean, if an intruder climbs into a window well, moves a steel grate, and squeezes through a broken pane of glass, how do delicate cobwebs survive the friction of a human body passing through?
It's a profound physical contradiction. Spider webs are remarkably resilient in nature, but they cannot withstand the mass and movement of a person.
Right.
So you have this investigative civil war happening. You have the Boulder police locked onto the family, and the DA's office locked onto an intruder.
And detectives were resigning in protest from both sides over this.
They were. Lou Smith resigned, claiming the police department was ignoring the intruder evidence. Steve Thomas, a lead detective for Boulder PD, resigned because he felt the DA's office was actively obstructing his investigation into the family.
It's just incredible. When you hit a stalemate involving broken paintbrushes and impossible cobwebs, modern investigations usually pivot to one thing to break the tie: DNA.
Oh, yes. DNA.
We treat DNA like it's a magic, infallible bullet, but here the DNA evidence has been a moving target for decades.
It's a perfect example of how advancing technology can sometimes complicate a narrative before it clarifies it.
Exactly. So back in 2003, forensic analysts managed to extract enough genetic material from blood spots on JonBenet's underwear to establish a profile.
Right.
It belonged to an unknown male, and it definitively excluded the Ramsey family. They ran it through CODIS.
And just to clarify, CODIS stands for the Combined DNA Index System.
Right, the database.
Yeah, it's a massive national database maintained by the FBI containing DNA profiles from convicted offenders, arrestees in certain states, and unknown profiles recovered from other crime scenes.
Yeah, got it.
If you run a sample through CODIS and get no match, it doesn't mean the profile is useless. It simply means that specific individual hasn't had their DNA entered into the system for a previous offense.
So they have an unknown male profile, but no name attached to it. Fast forward to 2008. District Attorney Mary Lacey takes this DNA evidence, specifically analyzing what's called touch DNA, and uses it to officially and publicly exonerate the Ramsey family, stating they were cleared of any involvement.
But as we know, science doesn't stand still.
No, it doesn't.
In 2016, a bombshell report revealed that newer, far more sensitive DNA analysis of that original sample showed it actually contained genetic markers from 2 unknown individuals, not just one.
Wait, 2 unknown individuals?
Yes.
That completely shatters the previous understanding of the evidence.
It does. And former police chief Mark Beckner and DA investigator Gordon Coombs publicly argued that using touch DNA to definitively clear anyone in a scene this chaotic is scientifically irresponsible.
Let's break down the biology here, because why is touch DNA so controversial?
Well, touch DNA relies on analyzing epithelial cells, which are the skin cells we are constantly shedding every single day.
Just constantly falling off us.
Exactly. If you pick up a pen, you leave cells behind. If you brush against a door frame, you leave cells.
Okay.
The issue is secondary or even tertiary transfer. DNA can be deposited on an item of clothing at the manufacturing plant, it can be transferred during packaging, or by a store clerk stocking a shelf.
Think about that carefully. Given that the crime scene was left unsecured for hours, with advocates, friends, and multiple officers moving through the house, touching surfaces, interacting with the family, Coombs argued that a microscopic trace of unknown DNA doesn't prove an intruder committed a murder.
Right.
It might just prove that a factory worker in another country folded a pair of underwear 6 months prior.
It forces investigators to confront a really terrifying question. Are they chasing the ghost of a killer or the ghost of a textile worker?
Wow.
And the danger of locking onto a single narrative and, ignoring the contradictory evidence was demonstrated globally in 2006 with the arrest of John Mark Carr.
Oh, the media circus around Carr was just unbelievable.
It was out of control.
He was a 41-year-old teacher arrested in Thailand who voluntarily confessed to the murder. He stood in front of cameras and claimed he drugged JonBenet, sexually assaulted her, and accidentally killed her. It felt like the case was finally closed.
Until investigators actually verified his statements against the physical evidence.
Right.
False confessions are a well-documented psychological phenomenon, often driven by a desire for notoriety or complex mental health issues.
And in his case,
Well, Carr claimed he drugged JonBenet, but the toxicology report from the autopsy showed absolutely no drugs in her system. None. And the details he provided were entirely consistent with what was already available in the public domain. And the final nail in the coffin, his DNA was not a match to the unknown profile found at the scene.
It's just exhausting trying to hold all of these fractured pieces together.
It really is.
When you look at the totality of this deep dive, the JonBenet Ramsey case is a profound tragedy locked inside a maze of contradictions. You have an unsecured crime scene juxtaposed against a highly complex ransom note written with the family's own stationery.
Right.
You have a broken window and a boot mark pointing outside, while intact cobwebs and undisturbed foliage point inside. The facts stubbornly refuse to align into a single, cohesive truth.
And we really must emphasize that this remains a highly active investigation.
It's not a closed chapter.
Not at all. According to the 2024 to 2025 update, the Boulder Police Department, alongside the FBI and the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, they have not closed the book on this.
The scope of their ongoing work is massive.
It is. They have processed over 1,500 pieces of evidence. They reviewed over 21,000 tips, letters, and emails. They have traveled to 19 different states to interview more than 1,000 people.
And Interim Chief Steve Redfern has publicly committed to utilizing evolving DNA technologies to relentlessly pursue a resolution.
Yes, they are not giving up.
Which leaves you with a fascinating yet deeply unsettling thought to mull over as we wrap up.
Yeah.
Usually, cold cases are cold because investigators lack the puzzle pieces needed to see the big picture. But what if, in this case, investigators are struggling because they've been given pieces from 3 completely different puzzles all dumped into the exact same box?
That's a haunting way to look at it.
As forensic science pushes the boundaries of what we can detect, we have to ask ourselves, will newer hypersensitive DNA testing finally filter out the static to reveal the truth? Or will it just pick up even more background noise from a house that was fatally compromised on the morning of December 26th?
It is the ultimate diagnostic dilemma.
We are still staring at that broken, murky X-ray, searching for a clean line in the dark. We want to warmly thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Take care.